Tonight, we're gonna do some tracking to tape on the good old Fostex R8. We've done some testing, it sounds pretty cool.
Let's just do a pass.
I mean, I literally had no idea how I was gonna get out of that. I thought I had an idea in my head and I couldn't remember it. So the kit, the big old Ludwig classic maples. And we went big this time. 26-inch kick, 13, 16, and the 8x14 classic maple snare. And as you can see, there's moon gel everywhere.
I get this in one take. It's way too, I mean, not one take, like right away. It's gonna take a little bit. Because it's pretty.
Well, you're
pretty
close.
busy.
Well,
busy.
we can always do a punch.
Yeah. We haven't tried that.
Exactly. So we'll try it on a live stream in front of everybody. We don't even know how to use it all.
All right, let's see what all these switches do. Oh. Thicker?
What?
Okay, thicker. Wow, it's like halfway. I'm like at 9 o'clock. Look at that. Wow.
It's pretty cool.
This is pretty cool.
What is happening, everybody? Uh-oh, I gotta get David unmuted here.
Unmute me.
There he is.
New
There
software.
I am.
software.
Hello. Hey, it actually works. Holy
Okay,
Christmas.
Ernesto's gonna do a check. We got a lot of moving parts today, but it's kind of exciting, actually. We got David back
Yep.
in after
All
the
good.
mishap earlier, which we're going to kind of go over. So before we get into it, Dave,
Yep.
we got a lot of stuff to talk about.
We do. We've been here for a
on
long
the
time.
February 5th show that we were supposed to have with you, we once again were having an OBS and Zoom issue. And for a lot of you that follow the channel, especially some of the longer live streams, know that we've had OBS issues with crackling and all this, and we have narrowed it down to OBS being the issue. And on the 5th, we could not get OBS and Zoom. It just, wasn't having it. We tried to stream out to David's channel that day. We're like, okay, backup plan. We're going to go right to David's channel. Because our Switch, our ATEM, was one of the older ones, it doesn't do the frame rates that Ecamm Live, Restream Studio, and the other, software-based streaming apps want. So we couldn't even do that. Right. So that day, Ernesto and I, that night, we put the old stuff up for sale, ordered one of the new constellations, got it installed, tested it just this past Friday, and today is officially the first stream that is the Constellation, the new Switch software, or the new Constellation, the new switcher, which I'm going to do a video on soon, this whole setup, because if you could see what's to the right of me, it's like just a wall of screens. And Ecamm, which I'm ridiculously excited about. If you saw the Roswell virtual showroom the other day, that was the new Switch, but we were doing one last push to OBS, just in case something went wrong. We knew what to fix on that end of things. But today, it's all Ecamm, new Switch software, and this is something that actually I got a lot of help from David, because you're an Ecamm guy, right?
I am, yeah, about 8 months in, because I was having the same issues you used to have. So I found Ecamm, and I've liked it, and I've been kind of pitching it to you for the last 6 months, and you finally pulled the trigger.
Yeah. Are you recording the broadcast?
It should be.
Okay, excellent. If it's automatic, we'll find out.
Yeah, so there are some, we're kind of learning this thing, so there could be a glitch here or there. The crazy thing is I'm actually controlling our entire video rig right now with screen sharing with this laptop via one Ethernet cable, which is making it a little bit more possible to make this happen.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of screens around us. It's almost like one of those futuristic movies.
But David, I appreciate your help with all this. This has been...
Oh, no, you're very welcome. And we're doing even another test, which is people have realized it now that we're actually streaming, or Charlie's actually streaming to both YouTube channels at the same time, Ultimate Studios and Mixing Music Analog. And people are saying there's about a 12-second delay. And the only reason why that is because we learned when Charlie went live on my end, and they must do this for security reasons, I had to allow you to go live. So I clicked the button about 10 seconds later than you did, and that's why there's a little bit of a sync difference. So for people watching, just watch it on one of the channels. You don't have to watch us on both channels, obviously.
Or watch it on both, and we're going to tell you that we're using a new tape delay that we...
That's right. But that's pretty cool that you can stream now to multiple places at the same time, not only your own channels, but you can do this kind of a thing, which is kind of cool.
We had done that, that we were using Restream for that prior to this, using OBS, push out to Restream and go into multiples. But what I'm loving so far, there was one mishap today when I didn't know that since we're not using RTMP anymore and we're using just the built-in pushers from Ecamm, when I hit go live, I wanted to do a quick audio test on YouTube, not knowing, or I knew better, I just didn't realize when I did it in the moment that not being RTMP, it's going to automatically set YouTube to go live.
Yeah, so you got to hope that it's there.
Yeah, but I like having everything is in one piece of software right now.
Yeah.
I actually have, for once, I'm not going to be staring over here to the side to see the guest. I got you right in front of my face. I got comments right here.
And it looks good too. I mean, I'm looking at the stream on your channel, and it looks really good. I mean, it's crisp, and you can tell the video quality is high end. It's not.
And I'm just going straight 1080 today. I'm not doing the 1440 or the 4K. I'm just keeping it simple.
The streams always seem to look better. At least that was the thing that Dave and I realized when I first switched. He said, "Wow!" And especially when we would pull up like the DAW on the screen and do screen sharing. I remember Dave saying to me, the one thing I noticed right away was I can see the detail on in your DAW, like the text and stuff much more crisp than what it was when you were using OBS.
Oh.
And oddly enough, I was doing 1080 in OBS and I was doing 1080 in Ecamm. I don't know why you would think theoretically it ought to look the same. And he said, no, it definitely looks more crisp and clean and easier on the eyes. So that was really cool to hear.
Yeah, we did last Friday night, we did tests with Ecamm, with straight OBS to YouTube, and pushing out to Restream Studio, going out. And we took screenshots of each one to make sure that it was not going to look bad, and Ecamm actually looked great. Straight OBS to YouTube also looked good, but going through Restream Studio, not just using Restream as an RTMP server, going through Restream Studio, it looked like 1080 was 720. We noticed a shift in the colors, especially the blacks, and we're like, wait, this isn't, okay, not doing this.
Oh, that's strange, yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to be this way. It's cool. This is a great test today. I'm glad we're doing it with you. I mean, we got so much gear to talk about. Yeah. I'm asking, I know some of the stuff you have, and I'm going to ask you for a loan at the end of this. Because I know what you've got.
My interest rates are better than the banks, I can tell you that.
So just so everyone knows, if there is if you hear any issues at all with the audio, with the video, please hit the comments and just let us know, because I'm keeping notes of this. This is a giant, first time out with all of this stuff. So if there's problems, let us know, because then I know what I can try to fix later. Having said that, Dave, you spent how much money on that Trinoff system? I'm going right there. We're going right to this.
You don't want to start small. You want to go right to the big one. Well, the Trinoff was when you get the Trinoff, and then you have to have the microphone. It was just shy of $6,000 US dollars.
And you were already using the SonarWorks, right?
I was. So yeah, the way that kind of happened was, I wasn't always using SonarWorks. As we started to, when we started to build out the room, and the more stuff we started putting in, and we kept adding racks and layer of racks, and there was more stuff, more screens, more video equipment, and this room started to get filled with a lot of stuff in order to do what we've been talking about, what we're doing. And I noticed, I started to notice that the mixes didn't sound the same to me. Something didn't sound right to me, and I was having a hard time getting things to translate the way I was always did. And so I said, let me try. I had SonarWorks laying around for a year. I just never installed it. They gave it to me as a demo thing or something. So let me just try it. And I tried it. I was really impressed with it. And I used it for a few weeks. And I was starting to get my ears acclimated. And I found that, oh, okay, now things are translating out of the studio a little bit better than what they were. So my theory was, I'm adding all this stuff in the room. Obviously, it's going to change the way the room sounds. And because of all the gear that we need to have in here, and I have the acoustic treatment. You couldn't put more acoustic treatment in this room if you wanted to. There's so much of it that I said, okay, let me go with SonarWorks. And then I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was telling him about this. I said, yeah, I didn't really realize over time, as I started adding more equipment racks, how much it was changing the sound, because it was kind of a gradual thing as I kept adding more stuff. And he had said, have you ever heard of Trinoff room correction? And I said, no, what's that? Is it a piece of software? And he says, no. And that's what he kind of turned me on to it. And I said, oh, let me go on YouTube. And I went on YouTube and started to research it. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really interesting. So, after watching a few videos and going, okay, let's see what this thing costs. And then I got on Vintage King and I saw what it costs. And I said, holy crap, SonarWorks is $300, and this is $6,000, and
it's
so
$499, Five's a little more, but no, it's like thousands more.
And then I said, there's no way. And so I got my friend back on the line that told me about it. And I said, look, dude, you got one of these things? He says, yeah. And he says, it blows SonarWorks out of the water. I'm like, well, what do you mean? That's a pretty powerful statement. And I'm one of these suckers that if you start telling me that things are going to be that much, I have to hear it for myself.
Of course.
So
right.
I said, right. I'm one of I can't, as you know, we talked about this before, with all the YouTube stuff and all the bad information on there. I'm not one of these. I don't want someone to tell me that it's different. I want to hear it. So I said, but I'm not spending $6,000, man, without a way to return the thing. So I got a hold of Vintage King, and long story short, he said to me, he goes, we sell these all the time. He goes, no one's ever returned one. I'll give you 30 days. You send it back, full refund if you want to try it. good enough. Here's my Vintage King card. Let me try it. I'm up for a challenge. You know? So I get it in the studio. We do the unboxing, and then I started to work with it. And I did a whole video if anyone's interested. It's on the YouTube. It's on the Mixing Music Analog channel.
You have 2 videos for that, right? Or is it just the one?
One's an unboxing, and then one is an absolute side-by-side comparison to SonarWorks, because I said that's what I want to do. And I was able to rig it up in a way because the Trinoff also has an app that's on the screen that can control the Trinoff system, which is really a rack-mounted computer. And then you could put SonarWorks up at the same time. And I was able to jigger it together. So all I can do is I can just click, turn one on, turn one off, turn one on, turn one off. And I can actually hear the difference between the two, so, you know, pieces of solution. And and I did a whole video and I walked everyone through exactly what the differences are. And there is probably around a 10% improvement over what SonarWorks does. And most of it really has to do with phase and time alignment, which is what SonarWorks does not do. It corrects any of the phasing issues that you have going on in the room. That's the big selling point. They both do the EQ thing and they both correct with EQ. And I did a measurement with SonarWorks and I took a screenshot of the EQ before and after, what they recommended. And then I did the same thing with Trinoff, and they were almost identical as far as both solutions recommended the same EQ curve, pretty much. I mean, I put them side by side because I said, if I'm spending $6,000, I have to know that it's different. So, but the difference really lies in the phase and in the time alignment. So what Trinoff does beyond what SonarWorks does, it fixes phase. And that was huge, especially in the low end. It also fixes I don't know how the hell it's all done inside of a desktop computer. It's a rack mounted computer. That's how it does it. It's not just a piece of software. It's an actual piece of hardware, specially designed code. But what it does is it measures, because the microphone that you use has 4 capsules on it. It's not a single microphone like a typical measurement mic. It's 4 little capsules on it. And when you put it in the mix position, it can measure the time that the left speaker sound hits the first capsule and the right speaker, and then the time it takes to hit the second capsule and third capsule. And it does some kind of voodoo to make that time alignment so it hits you right at the same exact part. It's really strange. I mean, it's really unbelievable. And all that means is, in the end, what it really does is it fixes the low end, it tightens it and focuses it. And it almost, with SonarWorks, when you listen to a reference track, it almost seems like there's a little more of a smearing effect. You know what I mean? Like a phase kind of a thing. With Trinoff, it's like as clear as a bell. And it's just a weird thing. And so I did a whole video on it, and I walked everybody through exactly what I was hearing, and I tried to describe it in as much detail as possible.
I watched the first one. I haven't had a chance to watch the second one yet.
Yeah,
but I was, you know, is 10% really enough to justify the cost, or is the time alignment that you mentioned that SonarWorks does not have, did that make the majority of that 10% difference?
Yes. Because in Trinoff, you can turn off what you can't do with SonarWorks. You turn it on, turn it off, because it's basically just EQ, right? Trinoff, you could turn off the EQ portion of the correction. You could turn off the phase portion of the correction. You could turn off the time alignment portion of the correction, so you can listen to them all independently. So that's how I know that it was mostly in the phase and in the time alignment, because as soon as I turned those off, it sounded much closer to SonarWorks. The other thing that it does is it also can measure the height of your speakers and the distance away from you. It's actually unbelievable how accurate it is to make sure you're sitting in that perfect triangle. Even though I've spent, you know, probably like everybody else, 3 hours with a tape measure when I first set up my speakers to make sure it was perfect, and you think it's perfect, it measures it down to the millimeter.
Yeah, that's crazy. I just redid my entire back wall, which is all now 9.5 inches thick, almost the whole back wall except where the door is and the super chunk in the corner. And it made a huge difference in my low end.
Yeah, here's another thing it does, which is kind of which I don't use, but someone like yourself probably would in your kind of a situation. You can have a bunch of presets. So I took measurements in the mix position, because obviously that's where you would take it. But then you can also, on, let's say, the couch in the back of the room,
Right.
you can take a measurement from back there and switch a preset, and it totally changes the algorithm. So no matter where you're sitting in the room, the mix sounds identical,
Oh wow.
which is
That
really
is- that-
weird. It's
That's
a
one
weird
thing we
phenomenon.
saw at Vintage King with the Craig. Oh man, I can't believe I'm spacing his name right now. But with the what speakers were those?
Yeah, the Genelec ones.
Yes, and they had the same thing where they had different, positions set up for the mix, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's really
is it-
weird.
So did you keep it then? Because I haven't seen
Yeah,
the second
I have
video,
it.
so you decided to keep it?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I mean, once you mix with it, and then if you switch back, you go, so here, people say, is it worth, again, here's what I tell people. People say, is it worth $6,000? Well, they said the same thing. Is my console worth $55,000?
Right.
Is it $55,000 better than plugins? Here's the thing. Once all I do for a living is mix. So, pardon me. So I want the absolute cleanest, most accurate thing that I can get. And if that's $6,000, I did about 10 mixes with it so far, maybe 12. And the mixes do come together even faster now. No longer do I need to check my thing on 5 different sets of speakers. So here was the other thing that I did on this is once I got used to it, I now started putting stuff on my phone again, running it out to the car, going through that whole thing to get my ears wrapped around. Is this thing really translating? And it is absolutely spot on. No more do I go to the car and I go, oh, it's a little bit more little low mid boomy. It's exactly what I think it sounds like is exactly what it sounds like. And the only thing I can attribute that to is because now you're hearing things, even if it's 10 or 15% more accurate than what I was maybe hearing in the past.
Well, the low end is probably a huge deal. I mean, because if
Also,
there's
in
any
the upper-
phase
even
issues
in the
down there,
upper
it's
mid.
not just the low end that's messing up what you're hearing.
Exactly.
That's messing up quite a bit of the top as well, because it just gets so smeared that your low mids become a giant mess. So yeah, that I could see how that would make a huge difference.
And what I also noticed too is I was, in the second video I said it, the low end's about 10%, 5 or 10% different, but what I even said in the video was where I really heard the most difference was in the upper mids and especially in the lead vocal. That and also like big distorted guitars, that 5K.
That was probably a lot of your console reflections and your side reflections from your rack and getting all that
cleaned
that's
up.
usually those frequencies that are smeared are up there is all.
And it was like,
we
it
have
was like,
giant desks in
whoa.
front of us.
It was like, what a difference that really made, especially in the lead vocal. I was really surprised because I thought it was really, because when I think of phase, I'm thinking the low end, right? But and it did fix or correct the low end, but it really made a much bigger difference in the upper mids. That's where I heard the biggest difference.
It's probably
And
a
I
jump
said-
off your console. Because if you're in that console, small head movements around and you get a different angle reflection, it totally. I mean, I was able sometimes at a certain height to move my head like this, and I could hear face shifts.
Yeah, it was really weird.
crazy.
And so it made a big difference. I mean, big enough for me that once I had it, I'm like, how am I going to go back now to not having it?
Right.
I send it back. I'm going to be saying the whole time, I really need to have this thing. So I'm like, and again, it's not for everybody, certainly. But I mean, if you're sitting in front of $100,000 worth of audio equipment in the room,
Right.
what's, at this stage, what's $5,000? I mean, you go,
Yeah,
okay,
when you compare that to the console, it's really a pretty small.
right.
It's a pretty small investment for something you use every single time you
Single-
work. I mean,
every
that
day.
was the jump when I went to the Atom speakers and I went there specifically because the way they handle mid-range. I mean, once I heard that, I was like, that's exactly what I need. And that's what it was. It was twice the price that I went out to spend. At that point, I was like, here's my budget. I got to find something that works. And I heard that and went, I can't. I have. That's what I want to hear. I've got to figure that out because it's the one thing. I use it more than the console. Because sometimes you just got 2 channels on the console. You don't really need a
Right.
console for 2 channels, but the speakers are on every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's great
So I
about it
get
too,
that.
there's no plugin you put in your DAW and you have to bypass it like SonarWorks. It's system wide. So whether I'm listening to a YouTube video or Apple Music or whether I'm working in a DAW, it doesn't matter. It's always corrected no matter what you're listening to.
Right.
Which SonarWorks is like that too. They have a desktop app, but then you have to put the app in the in the master bus, and you have to make sure you bypass it before you export your file. You don't do any of that with Trinoff. It just sits in the background. You forget it's there. You don't even have to do anything.
See, that's a
is
plus
kinda nice.
too. The less you have to deal with it in real time.
There's nothing to do. It just sits there. It's just rack mounted. It's a computer, and that's it.
Well, I mean, I'm not getting it today, but that is definitely.
I honestly didn't think there would be that much of a difference. I thought it can't be that much different. But here's the thing, see, and again, you can't do the YouTube video on that because you can't hear what's going on in the room.
Right.
So the only way you really know is you have to go stand in the room with one, or what Trinoff does. They have offices all over the country. I didn't know this. There's actually a distributor right in my home state, which I had no idea. They'll come out and demo it for you right there in your studio. You like it? Give them the credit card. You don't like it? They pack it up and take it away, and they'll do it for free. But I can see why they do that.
Yeah.
They go, okay, you're going to go in, and so it is. But it's not for everybody. If you're not doing this in a business capacity and you don't have deep pockets, you don't need you get SonarWorks, acoustically treat your room, and that's the way to go. I'm not saying everyone should run out and buy one. I'm just saying this is something, as I'm dialing in the studio and it's becoming more, it's a commercial venture. I want every advantage I can get.
Oh, of course. I come from the get it as right as you can in the room before doing that. I know I have a couple of friends that didn't even bother doing anything to their rooms really, because they just went right to their SonarWorks, of course, and went right to that, and it didn't quite work out the way they thought it was going to.
Yeah.
And this is so much better. I don't even need to spend money on the acoustic treatment, and then they were
not true.
Had basically the same issues, just in a kind of different angle,
Right. And Trinoff will tell you that too. They say you can do it in an untreated room and it will do something, but you're not really getting the benefit out of what you're spending. You really need to treat the room just like you normally would. And then this kind of puts that, if there's anything in the room that you can't fix based on your limitations and your space problems and things that are out of your control, this will help dial in the room even more.
Right.
Yeah. They're asking you if it works for 5.1 and all the surround stuff.
Yes, now I guess there's different systems. So 6,000 is the entry level.
Oh,
So
nice.
they make systems for Dolby, for home theaters, and they get very expensive.
Okay, so 5.1, what, 15?
Yeah,
Just turn something off.
I think the 5. I want to say it's 10 grand. You'd have to look at their way because I'm not in that market, so I didn't really look.
Yeah.
But they also have they also have ones that have a full monitor control section built into it if you want as well, so you can have multiple pairs of speakers with a nice little with a really high-end remote. And I guess they have a bunch of different types of solutions. I have the entry-level piece, which is just you can hook up 2 pairs of speakers and that's it, because that's all I really needed.
Yeah.
I just turned something off and I can't figure out how to turn it back on. I just accidentally hit something in Ecamm and
So talking about treatment, they're asking how much better have your monitoring been since the back room absorption and the switch to the Adams?
Oh, it's probably right now the best it's ever been, and that was largely due to the back wall. The Adams was a huge switch, especially in the mid-range.
But yeah, treatment is always
and I did a ton of testing with that. One, you can't see them all, but there's a handful of new 8-inch deep panels. There's 2 on the sides of the windows and behind the desk that made a huge difference. And then the whole, I don't even know if I've really shared too many photos of that yet, but I redid all the panels directly behind. So they're 9.5 inches thick. It's 6 inches of Roxol AFB and 3.5 inches of just good old-fashioned John Mansfield fluffy insulation. And then the front of them has one layer of, what's that stuff called that you put that's like underneath chairs, that holds the padding in, the white, like knitting, whatever that's called. If you ever made a chair, you know what it is. And that's on the front of everything to kind of keep it smooth. And the second that stuff went up, and then we did a tweak on where the sub was and the volume of it, this room is completely different. You could used to be able to sit on the back couch, which is not always, we're not I don't have the trend off, so I'm not tuning the room for the back couch.
Right,
But if you sat in the middle, your head kind of rattled because of the low end. If you went 1 foot to the right or left, there was almost none. And then if you sat on the edge of the couches, it actually was pretty good. And I don't have a giant couch back here. Now, with that whole wall done like that, the couch, wherever you sit back there, though not the same as this position right here, is even. It doesn't change from the middle to the edges.
That's
so
good. Yeah.
I've learned that now, so I can go back and sit on the couch and know what I'm listening for.
Right.
And then I also walk in the front room a lot. But I think now I'm at a place that I can actually take advantage of what the atoms are giving me. At least that's how I feel.
Yeah, a lot of times people spend a lot of money on monitors, and again, they forget about the room. And you could put really high-end monitors in a room that's not treated, and you're not going to hear it right. And that's, that's true. I mean, so I would always tell everyone, start, and I've always said this long before I had a trend off, start with the acoustic treatment in the room. Start there spend your money there and buy a lesser quality monitor if that's all you can afford until you can afford a better set. Because you could put ATCs in your room and spend $25,000, and if the room doesn't sound right, those ATCs aren't going to help you either.
Right.
Because once you get beyond the, $1,500, $2,000 a speaker, once you're in that game, no matter who you buy, you're getting a high quality monitor that if it's in the right room, it's going to sound right and it's going to be accurate.
I did 15 years at least with those Yamahas, or we had the 8s, and then there was variations of the 50s. So even those are not expensive monitors. And once you get to know them,
well, that's it too.
And your room, there's a lot you could do without the rest. Though I think a big reason why I wanted to go from the Yamahas though is I did hit that point to where I was tired of guessing at certain things, or there were spots that okay, I'm not hearing what I need to hear, but I know how they react, so I kind of know what to do, right? And I was kind of tired of that. I wanted to have all the information I could that was right, so I could start making better choices.
Right.
Not based on just understanding what I'm hearing, even though I'm not hearing it, if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense.
I went to get rid of the 5s. No, wait, it was the 8s first. Yeah, so I wanted to get rid of the 8s and keep the 5s. But when we went to Vintage King and a couple other friends, Barry Rudolph had some stuff, and I checked out the Callies for a minute. I actually had a pair for a day and sold them. But we noticed one thing, that all the mixes were translating that were done on the 8s really well. So I'm like, okay, that'd be dumb. So then started going back between the 5s, going, okay, well, wait a second. Let's just find a set of speakers that would complement with the 8s. Right. Adam was not on my list. We were at Vintage King. We had a list of whatever they had there, and we were going through them, and the guy accidentally turned the wrong thing on. And he's like, oh, wait, that's wrong. Wait a second. What speaker is that? And he goes, oh, those are the Adam. I'm like, that's it. I'm hearing what I want to hear.
Which model is that? Is that the new? Is that the
A7X? I don't even have the new ones with all the fancy.
Yeah, okay. You have the A7X.
I got them right before they released all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I'm fine. I actually like them a lot. And then I was going to use them as, okay, I can work all day on these, because the Yamahas wore my ears out. The high end is just unbelievably in your face. And as the months went on, I found myself not turning the Yamahas on very much, and I was really getting used to it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to one set of speakers.
Right.
And I'm just going to get it down. And then once I did that, then I ordered one of the subs. So I had the whole system, and then there's that whole thing. I mean, I'll bet that thing has been placed at 87 different places, like inches at a time, volume adjustments a dB at a time, that. And then we got that set, and then I did the back wall and everything, and all of a sudden I went, ooh, now I'm hearing what I want to hear. Yeah.
Right. And that makes a big difference, man. Once you get it dialed in, then you go, well, how can I go backwards now? That's how I was supposed to go. Okay, now that I can hear it right and I know it translates, and I'm ready to sell off all my other speakers, because I have 5 sets of speakers I would check everything on. Now I just check them on my Focals, and I have a little, Bluetooth mono speaker and that's it. All my other shit is going to eventually get sold, because I don't need to do it anymore. I don't need to switch them on 3 or 4 different sets of speakers now. Right. I know between the Focals and my which have the sub, and then the Bluetooth speaker, and then my headphones, done. If it sounds balanced there, I know it's right, because I've been out to my car, the wife's car. I've been everywhere with this thing on my phone, playing it everywhere to make sure that I'm not just being fooled by this piece of equipment, that it's really doing what I think it's doing. And it is. And like I said in the video, if it wasn't, I would have put it right back in the box. I would have sent it back.
Right.
I mean, I told Vintage King that, and I said it in the video. It wasn't a sponsored video, because people ask, oh, they sent you a Trent off. Believe me, I'll show you the bill. $5,800. They didn't send me a Trent off.
Yeah, I know that was not a sponsored video.
No.
It's you did that just because well, you wanted to improve your situation and then maybe enlighten some other people.
Yeah, and I just said, and I'm going to tell, because people, there's nobody. Here's the other thing about Trinoff too. Like when you look on YouTube, almost all the videos are done by the Trinoff, team, the Trinoff company, and they're talking to, some high level engineers that have the system. So of course they're going to say everything is great.
Right.
I mean, they're not going to put up a video that says that it doesn't really sound that great, ain't worth the money.
Yeah, I didn't like it, and yeah, Trinoff's never going to put that out.
Right. So I wanted to know for myself. So I think I'm probably, if not the only one, certainly one of the only ones that actually went out, bought it, and then told you what I really thought. I think.
All right. I want to use, is there a question somewhere? Because I want to use this new feature that I can pull in the questions into the stream. Because I've turned the background image off, and I can't figure out how to turn it back on.
Oh, yeah,
so,
you can put the comment, you can put the comment on the screen, right? Yeah, it's still running on both channels. At least it looks like it is on this side.
I wish I could figure out how to get my background image back on. Because it says it's on, but I accidentally just haphazardly have my hand laying on the trackpad. And
you may have to look in your little overlays panel. You may have hit the little.
It says it's on.
Oops.
Yeah. Okay, if that's the worst thing that happens today, we're doing okay.
We're doing
the
okay.
Black background. It's boring, but you know what? You can still see all of us.
Right. You can see and hear everybody.
And it's also interesting looking at the iMac over here is a 2019 with the, is that a 5K screen? It's 5K screen, right?
Yeah.
And have that on a 2012 laptop, and I'm trying to see everything. And it's either really, really tiny, or I have it, they do scaling in the screen sharing, which is great, but I have to zoom all over the page to get everything.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, so black background it is for now. At least we're all there.
That's okay. Looks good.
Okay, come on. I want a question. I want to use this. Damn it, this is new. I want to use it.
Somebody ask a question so you can put it on the screen.
I gotta scroll.
Yeah, it's Marco says, don't turn it back, bro. David looks weird with Ernesto's arms. My OCD was killing me.
Yeah, because I accidentally turned on the camera to be in the background. I don't know what I heard. Okay. You got some other new gear. You got a pair of 542s now, right?
I do, yeah.
So
Yep.
is that the only tape emulators you have? Is that your first set? I should phrase that question better.
Yeah, I used to have a pair many years ago when I was working all in the box and didn't have any other hardware, and for some reason I sold them. And then the only other ones I tried were by DYIRE. Dave brought over his tape emulators, and we tried those. We did a video on them. They're pretty cool. But I remember liking the Neves. I bought the Neves, and I think the Neves blow that other thing out of the water. They're not even close.
I don't. Actually.
Because I just like the flexibility on it, and but I only played with Dave's for that one video. I didn't spend a lot of time with it. We only did one video, and we didn't actually compare it to the Neves because at the time I didn't have them. So I think we're going to do a video at one point where he's going to bring them back up, and we're going to put them side by side against the 542.
If you compare them, if you try to do apples to apples, you're barking up the wrong tree. You got it. The 15 IPS. I'm going to get crucified for saying IPS. The 15 IPS. I'm calling it the IPS, man. There's something cool to the simplicity of it, and once you find the sweet spot on them, and it took me a little while. I mean, I used them for like 6 or 8 months. How long did I had those things for a while, maybe even longer than that, before I really kind of went, started to really find where they work. But you're right, the Neve has a lot more functionality. Ton.
Yeah.
But give the 15 IPS a fair chance. I'm just going to say it until people accept it, that I'm saying IPS.
Yeah.
Give it a fair chance and find out how it works, because it is a fantastic tool. And I also found that sometimes when I had it set to do what it did to me control wise, I didn't necessarily hear the difference. It wasn't adding any bottom. It wasn't doing anything else. It was just containment in a way that I really liked better than compression, which sometimes can be disappointing, because you get a piece of gear, you want to put it on, you want to, hey, this should make it sound better, but sometimes it's not obvious. But back to the 542s. What are you using them on? Where's the application?
Right now they're on the master bus. For the 5 or 6 mixes I've done with them, I've patched them in on the master bus right after the SSL Fusion. So I go from the Fusion into the 542s.
So the Fusion, you just got one of those, right? Does that also has some saturation on it?
Yeah. It has some density.
Yeah, it has a vintage drive circuit in it. It does. It has a transformer circuit in it. So I have it all in. I mean, I got everything activated, but I don't hit the Fusion very hard, and I don't hit the 542s. I know where the sweet spot on the 542 is, and I kind of set it and forget it and push the console into it a little bit. You know what I mean?
That's how I have them also.
Yeah. And then I just flip between the red circuit and the blue circuit. I always start on the red because I just tend to like that, but every now and again it's a little bit too much gas in the tank, so I'll go to the blue. And then that's how I have it. And then on the Fusion, I'm using the vintage drive, but it's almost all the way down. It's not hitting it very hard. Because after that, I'm now hitting another master bus EQ, which I'm sure we'll talk about. So I got saturation happening in a lot of different places. So I'm just hitting it every one of the places. I'm hitting it pretty conservatively because that's just typically my thing. I don't overcook any one stage of it.
Right. Yeah, if you turn my master chain off, my master mix bus chain, it's not the mix doesn't like drastically fall apart or change.
Yeah, mine either.
And I have what's my order? I have my 542s after my C1, but before my ultraviolet. And then I'm like you, I almost never use the blue circuit, because I find that when you have if you're using a lower amount of saturation, there is already a low bump that is in the circuit of the 542s, which almost usually is enough for me. But picking between the red circuit and sometimes the top end of the ultraviolet gives you two different ways of doing it. And occasionally it's all on. Sometimes I Joe Barisi it. Everything is on.
I start with everything on, and then I'll start turning things off if I need to. But typically, I like to keep them on and just do it conservatively. It just kind of...
Okay, that's a good question. So on your mix bus, you start with... you mix into it from the beginning of the mix, right? Is that the way you're doing it?
Absolutely. Always did.
And then take stuff off as you go, or do you just, as you get in through a mix, do you kind of sometimes just turn things on and off, like different features on and off, just to see what helps?
Yes. Yeah. So either I could take it all out at the console level if you wanted to, all the insert points, or I could go over to the gear and turn off specific parts of the gear.
So you're actually using the inserts on your master channel of the console?
Yes.
Interesting.
That's how
I don't. I run my output, though. So my master fader is a push into it all instead of being on the
yeah, you can do it that way too. Yeah, I do it on the insert point, and I just push, I go from the channels to the buses and then push into it that way. And then it ends up coming back out of all that shit back into the to the bus compressor on the console and then to the print track. But even
are you printing back into the same computer, or are you running a separate print?
No, it's on the same computer.
And that's all through your quantums, right?
Yeah, it's all through my quantums. Yeah. And it works fine. There's no latency. I'm running the M1 Mac Mini, the M1 chip. There's no latency. There's no lag. It just works seamlessly, which is pretty surprising. But it works. It works perfectly.
They're working on new ones of those, aren't they?
They already have them. The M2 chip.
No, the quantums.
Oh yeah, I've been told that. Again, I don't know anything about when or if or how, but I've been told that there was always a plan to update the quantums to a Mark II or whatever they're going to call it. But that happened all right around when COVID hit, and then all the shortages and everything. And I'm sure that put a
Yeah,
kibosh
they
on a
probably
lot
got
of that
stuck
stuff.
in it the way everybody else did. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's when all that kind of happened, right as COVID was coming online. So yeah, but that's where my 542s are, and I love them.
I'm trying to look through the comments here. I saw one that I wanted to answer.
Oh, here's a question about acoustic treatment. What do you guys think about the GIK stackable bass traps? I don't know those.
I've never used them. I know Barry Rudolph has a bunch of those. I mean, I don't know if it's that specific one, but I know he has a lot of GIK stuff, and he always tells me he loves it. It works really well. I personally haven't used any of it, so I mean, they make good stuff. So, and I know people that have it, so I would, if you get something from them, I think it would be good.
Yeah, because some people, going back to the tape simulators, were commenting about the burls compared to the Neve ones.
I've never used the burl.
And the burl is about...
I don't know. I've heard of them. I've never used burl stuff, but I know people that have different burl converters and stuff, and I've never heard anyone say a bad thing about them.
No,
they're
me either.
intentionally very colored, and they're going to be very colored, and that's kind of one of the reasons why you buy them. But I've never used them.
Yeah, me either. And they're a bit for my price range on a lot of things.
Yeah, they're a little pricey as well. Yeah, they are. They're up
well,
there.
Apparently the tape simulator is $2.5K.
The B2 Bomber?
Yeah.
But isn't the Bomber? I mean, I don't know that line very well, but I thought the Bomber was actually I/O.
It is.
Converters?
I think it's like a converter, but it has
it has transformers in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has some kind of other additional feature for that type emulation kind of a thing.
Right. I like kind of. I mean, that's why I was asking you kind of how you're using yours, because I something I've been getting into a lot more. I mean, not like really deep diving it now, and I'm probably going to build a couple more of the DIYs, because I also have the Royal Blues as well as the 15 IPS. And there's another company from England, not the HRK stuff. There's another one. I'll remember it in a second. But I've been using a lot more of my saturation as my compression control. So I have, the Sound Sculptors, which are a very different thing than the DIY or the Neve. I don't really know how to explain them. It's so different. But I run a lot of those now when I'm mixing in my groups of everything. And I do the same thing. I have a cheap-ass tube mic pre that I run the guitars through a lot. It sounds great. The ART, right? The TPS2. Don't sleep on those. They're great. But don't drive the prices up either. I've noticed that I've started using a lot more of that, so I can, my compression has become a lot less of how I try to contain something anymore, and a lot more of I need an attitude, or I want a color, or I want a something like that. And I use the saturation not to try to bloat everything all the time, but just in like a drum kit, if you get it on the right things, it makes the whole kit set together. Like I may have it on kick and snare and hit it a little bit, but then I may go to the Royal Blues for the mix bus after my compressors.
Right.
And it just, and I don't know, I found that, and maybe that's because we've been tracking to tape quite a bit lately and hearing what it's doing to the transients, even though it's not a Studer, that has made me even go down that road more on the normal, everyday digital side of recording stuff. And I've even been hitting my console harder again on the recording side. Drums if I'm running into the Lundau's, I'm almost always in the red on the inputs. It's just, sometimes a little smoke comes out. And I found that I've backed off using a lot of my outboard. There may be, if I'm grouping kick drums together or mics together like I do, maybe I have a little compression there just to kind of help fit them together a little bit or something. But hitting the console harder has been giving me that thing, the transformers, kind of.
Well, yeah, the console's a compressor. I mean, the way I teach it is, and I'm always pretty much the same way, but especially when I started mixing hardware, is that to me, I think of all saturation, compression, to tape, all of that is they're all levels of compression. All of it. So as soon as that audio comes out of those converters and goes to the console, you're hitting it with so I call it stages of compression. That's your first stage of compression. Hit the preamp, it is compressing. And if you're like you with the transformers, or like with mine, I have the SSL as a transparent circuit in the preamp and what they call their true drive circuit, which is nothing more than just some coloration and some distortion. and some compression. As soon as you hit that, engage that circuit, you can see it on the meter. You can see the level drop. You can hear it compress. So that's the first stage of compression. And then as I'm running it out to a bus, let's say drums going to a drum bus and I'm hitting it with a drum bus compressor, that's a second stage of compression. And then I'm going out to the Fusion. The Fusion's got vintage drive. That's a compressor. It's a third stage. And you start stacking it. So a snare drum, for example, is hitting about 8 stages, 7 stages of compression before I ever put a compressor on the snare track. And that's how I always think about, I don't think a compression is different from saturation, what's different from tape. To me, it's all the same thing. And then forgetting the fact that
it's all different versions of the same thing.
And then you add on top of it, each one of those have a different EQ curve. So I think of these things as EQs. I don't even think of them as compressors anymore. So when I'm picking a compressor, I think we talked about this the last time we were together. We were joking about all the compressors, and I said, it almost doesn't matter to me. Bass guitar, is it LA2A? Is it a stay level? Is it 1176? Is it a distressor? It almost doesn't matter. They all sound a little different, yes, but they all do the same thing. They all control dynamic range, but I don't think of it that way. I think of it as, okay, that bass guitar is very bottom heavy. I need some grit and some stuff on the top. So I'm picking the compressors with that in mind first. And then worried about, do I need to, how much of the dynamic range do I need to control? And when I started to think that way, I found that the overall, the mix has a different kind of a personality now because it's a compound effect. If you think that way throughout your whole mix, it's like having a soup and you're throwing different spices in the soup, but not too much of any one spice, but just the right amount of stuff.
I do that similar thing even before I touch EQs. Like for a bass, for instance, I have about 3 different compressors here that I like for different reasons. And I ask myself the same question that you do. What am I hearing here and what do I need to add to it or take away? And before an EQ, sometimes I don't actually EQ bass anymore. If I get my chain set up right, sometimes it takes care of my problems.
Sometimes you don't need to.
But it's that I need grit. Okay, what do I have that gives me the grit without having to do something else? Oh, I have, I might use the Comp 3A Junior because I want a little bit of a smack on it. Or we did the tape first episode. We took that bass that he already ran through an EVH and we wanted it steady, but we wanted to make it even more aggressive. So we put it through the DIY 15 IPS all the way on to where it distorted and it made the bass just sit. It didn't move. And we didn't even put a compressor on it.
Right.
But I think that's a great way of looking at, because you're looking at those things as color pieces in a way. And tone shapers as much as you are, or maybe even more. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe even more than a dynamic control device.
Yeah, I think
that's a big shift in listening.
Absolutely, and I don't even think of it as a dynamic control device. When I teach it, I talk to students of what it does dynamically, but I'm always saying, okay, I mean, I just finished up a mixing course. It actually comes out tomorrow. But one of the things throughout this course, it's okay, we got the lead vocal, and I go, okay, well, we know I need to compress it. It's too dynamic. What are we going to use? And I turn around and look at the rack and go, we got 15 of them available. So here's what we're going to do, and here's how I think about it. This vocal is a male vocal. He's got a very low voice. He's very chesty. So the first thing I want to do is brighten it up. But I'm not going to go to the console and just turn up 8K. I could do that. But I'm thinking about, okay, what is going to give me a more aggressive top end and open up the top a little bit? It's not going to be a stay level. The stay level is going to roll off the top end. I'm going to use a blue stripe. I have a blue stripe that sounds bright. So I think of it like that. And then when I do that and I'm compressing it and seeing how it sits, then I might add EQ after it. Maybe it's Pultec. Maybe it's just a little of 10K on the board. It all really depends. But I always think of compressors I think of them as EQs. I don't think of them as compressors anymore.
I use my IGS tube core in a similar way that you just spoke about your blue stripe. If I have a vocal that needs presence, because it's a little bright in a cool way, but it's also that type of compression is very round, so you can really hit a vocal with it and just make it like kind of almost airy in your face.
Yeah, so it's knowing your tools and how to use them. And I always say it's the same thing with your plugins. If it's the same thing. You got to get out the plugin, put it on a bunch of different sources and turn all the knobs 17 ways to Sunday and listen to what it's doing. Forget how much it's compressing. Don't even worry about that. What does it do to it tonally or stylistically, however you want to look at it? And then start thinking about that when you pick the pieces that you're going to use. And that's why, as now I start filling out the studio with, I have limited rack space now. So it's like, okay, I got to be very selective. Like if I'm going to buy another compressor, it has to do something different than everything else we already got.
Right.
I don't need 12 of the same sound, because the dynamic, they all control dynamic range in a little bit of a different way, but they all control dynamic range.
Right. Yeah.
And
sometimes when you get something in context, it's not as noticeable which piece of gear you chose, because some of the differences, especially if it's only on one source, between compressor A, B, C, and D,
it's all the
aren't
same.
all that big.
They're
and
not.
Get lost in the fray of guitars and keyboards and drums and stuff. you know?
Yeah. So I think a lot of times people get too hung up on listening to the little subtle differences and this one's better than that. And it's like, they're all the same, man. You could give me the same, it doesn't matter. I'll make it sound the way I want it to sound. And that really changed and I always thought that way, but way more so once I started getting into hardware. That's really opened up my eyes, because the hardware, especially compressors, hardware sounds way different than plugins when you talk about compressors.
Right. Okay. So I've got to use this function. So Marcus,
Put it up on the screen.
I've never done this. I have no idea what it's going to look like. Okay, that's not bad. So I thought that was actually a good way of kind of putting this, assuming he's following what we're talking about. It sounds like gain staging on a frequency base, not just loudness.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what it is.
It is. That
worked.
And you can also
Thanks,
take that
Marcus.
comment, by the way, when you put it up on the screen, if the comment's
Yeah.
too small or too big, you can resize the box and reposition it, by the way, if you didn't know that.
Hold on. Now I'm looking at the other computer. It's just easier to see.
Now the comment looks good. I
wow.
can see it, but you can
Look
move
at
it around.
that.
And there you go.
Man, I'm excited.
See?
Finally. That's the first one.
There you
Okay,
go.
I'm done. I'm ready to go Chipotle.
There you go.
Now I got to turn it off, though. There we are.
Oh,
And-
Okay, I'm excited.
here's some tape question. BG is asking, where did you find a reel of 456 for the Fostix?
They actually came when I bought it. There was 2 brand new reels of 456. Unbeknownst to me at the time, and I've had a bit of an education over the last month with a bunch of help from, I was hoping I might see him from Flux Studios. Has been very, very helpful. I had it a little work done to the tape machine itself, but then I had to put a new capstan belt in it. And that first reel of tape, the one that we actually did that Cue the Tape episode 1 on, was a little bit sticky. And
Oh,
it was
really?
a problem, even though it was brand new and still in the wrapper. So as I did some research about that Ampex tape, because this one says Quantity, but it's still those blue boxes. And I
Yep.
was able to trace the Guitar Center tag was still on it and had the full part number. And I was able to trace that back to catalogs from 1992 while it was still Ampex. So I knew those were just probably leftover Ampex runs after Quantity had bought it, and they were probably blowing, trying to get rid of things because they figured out some of the SSD, the sticky shed, after Quantity bought them. So I had 2 of those, and we went to do the second recording, and I'm like, man, he came over, and we were already booked to do it. We're getting ready to write. It was after we tried to do a live stream of it, and I'm like, man, I'm not feeling good about this tape. I put it on. It's squeaking a little bit. So I put it on back. I rewound it onto the take-up reel, and then fast-forwarded it back off, and then put it back on. And the second reel was fine. It was reacting, perfectly. Speed was good. Everything was that. So I didn't actually find that. You can still find those on eBay, but from what I have learned over the last month and what I have read, you're probably not wanting go the Ampex route of that 456, or the early Quantity versions of that. The Red Label Quantity apparently is where they fix some of that. But then there's ATR Magnetics. They actually still make tape. So I'm going to try that next time. I'm going to order some ATR once we get through this reel right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't actually find them.
And then segue into the question before. It's like, what is the thing that you love about the tape and the things that was not that great?
Honestly, so far, I love everything about it. I mean, how many times do I say that when we're
Yeah.
see, you guys don't know this, but I talk a lot. Well, yeah, you know. I mean, especially when you get David and I together, it's like a chatterbox. We're like two monkeys that you put the quarter into, and we're like, yeah, let's talk. But I tell this to Ernesto as we're doing it, I absolutely love the workflow of it. Now, I get that it's probably in some modern workflows when you're fast, it isn't going to work. I totally get that. Luckily, for me at this point, I'm not dealing with a lot of that, or at least in the way when we're recording to tape. I love the process of not having that thing to look at, having a mouse in front of you, and having to rely solely on your ears. I've also noticed that between the two of us, and even when we did some of the 4-track stuff and Minnow was here, you stay engaged very differently than when there's a computer involved. There's no Command Z. You're not doing a bunch of takes, and we're not even ping-ponging or bouncing. We're going 8 tracks, and that's it. At least that's how we're doing it right now. So you really have to focus on performances, what you're doing, how you're playing. But the biggest thing that I've noticed over the last couple weeks, and this is starting to have a big impact on my, back to normal Logic recording, is the way I am listening while we're getting sounds now is rapidly changing to be way more detailed, because I know that I can't easily fix it. And yes, I could dump stuff into the computer, but I'm removing that equation. I'm not even thinking about that. I've got to, we spent a bunch of time on that. Well, this one's not out yet, but on one of them that either be episode 2 or 3 with the guitar, and there was something, the guitar tone was great, but there was something that was in the bottom. I did not like how it was reacting with the drum sound that we had and what might be coming. And we spent an hour plugging in a couple different EQs. I ended up with the 8803 with the tight Q and just sweeping, finding those things to get rid of it. Go move a mic. Oh, that's not cool. Let's pull it back a couple inches. Ooh, there it is. That's the spot. There it sounds good. And that's starting to happen faster. And I'm not even, then I was paying attention to it, but now it's just, I realize that I come in and I do something, I'm automatically starting to listen that way all the time. So at the very least, even if we never record anything else to tape, or I probably won't do a whole lot of actual bands coming into the good old R8, but it has made me listen so differently, and it's helping.
Well, now you're engineering. So now
Yes.
Everything you just said is what an engineer does. I heard a saying last week. I forget who it was from. I can't take credit for it, but they said, before there was Pro Tools, there was pros.
Good one.
And I thought that was genius. And they were just like, you know who it was? It might have been Steve Lukather. He's a big session. Everyone knows, in the 80s.
Sounds
They were talking
like
about
something Lukather would say.
Yeah, how you go in the studio and you really had to have your shit together. And it's like, we're playing. We're going to run through the charts once, and take 2 is what's on the record 8 out of 10 times. And he said that's just the way it was done.
Yep.
And he said today, not that there's not fantastic musicians today, of course there is, but he was just making the point that all that digital stuff is wonderful for a lot of reasons that we all know, but it's a crutch in a lot of ways too. And it takes now you have the safety net that you didn't have maybe back, what you're talking about, which is
right.
Once the guitar tone's on the tape, to go back. So let's spend 30 minutes and get the guitar sound right, because once it hits the tape, we're leaving it and we're moving on. And that's a different mindset.
Also, that kind of mindset I'm trying to carry into more of my everyday workflow as well. And I'm doing this with a couple of the artists that I'm producing now. It's like, we're not going to do 87 takes of something. We're going to figure out what we like. We're going to go for it. We're going to dial in a sound now. There's no, you can fix it later. No, we can fix it now also. So we're going to, because those things also inform your next decision. So, for instance, this episode 2 of Cue the Tape that isn't out yet, we actually did a second live stream of that. And this is probably also what prompted the finally OBS is out of here, because I didn't realize for 20 minutes the aliens had landed in the damn stream. And I was like, I'm done with this. But we had started to dial in, we had a sound for the drums, and we're trying to work, and it was okay. And, we got a guitar sound. Actually, there was a guitar sound I really liked. And once that went on, I went, oh my God, these drums don't work with this at all. This isn't what I was hearing in my head. So we went back and re-recorded that, and we started with a particular sound for the bass the drums and the guitars. And we did the bass first, actually, and which when the video comes out, you'll understand why, because it was kind of a synth kind of thing, right? So we had the low ends kind of set. We had some of what was in the low mid already set, and we had to dial everything around that. Okay, well, I can't have my kick drum beefy there, so let's make sure we mold the bass drum around it. Okay, the guitars, and we know what the bass sounds like. We know what our drums are. We're putting the guitars on there. Okay, you know what? We need to, oh, that's clashing a little bit. Let's get rid of that now. Let's move the mic. Let's do this. And every decision we made for sound just got stacked on each other. And by the time we got done, we had most of the sounds we wanted.
Right, and the mix is done at that point. I mean, then there's not a whole lot of mixing happening after that.
Right.
It mixes itself as you go.
Well, you can be creative then. You know, there's mixing and there's fixing a lot of the times. At this time now, when we go to mix, it's like, ooh, what effect might I add to this to make it even cooler? Instead of going, man, this bass tone is so not working. What am I going to do? I'm going to have, you know, none of that stuff. Yeah. So it's been great for the ears. And I highly recommend anybody, even if you have a DAW that has 5 million tracks available, and I'm sure there's going to be one that has that many tracks soon, if it doesn't already exist. Force yourself to do a recording and go, I only get 8 tracks, period.
Yeah, it's funny. I used one of your videos recently as an example. I don't even know if I told you. When you did I think it was Roswell, where you did Little Wing. You recorded Little Wing?
Yeah.
Great performance by great recording. I think I actually got the multi-tracks from Mike. He had actually sent them to me. I was able to mix it for fun. Great recording, by the way. But anyway, I posted on Facebook, and I had said, here's a lesson for all you, because I get this every day. I mean, I get sessions, 130 tracks, 140 tracks. And I'm taking that, and we're going to eliminate about 1/3 of those, because I don't need 17 sets of room mics for the drums to get a good, so I was using the fun stuff. I was using your thing as an example. I said, you know, here's a great example where there's 9 tracks in this session, and it sounds fantastic. I think it was 2 or 3 mics on the drums. It might only have been 2.
It was 3. It was a pair of overheads and a kit, like
that's right.
About a foot in front of the kick drum.
Yeah, a female vocal and a male vocal track, a bass and a guitar, not rhythm guitar, lead guitar, second solo track, third solo track, 1 track played top to bottom, and I think I posted it on my Facebook page. I just said to all you young producers out there, it says you can't make a fantastic piece of music with 9 tracks. So I said, you know, so when another thing about working analog I really like is I don't care how many tracks are in the session. We're going down to 48 tracks. That's the max I'm going to do. We're going to comp them. We're going to eliminate, because when I get something that has over 100 tracks, 9 times out of 10, 30% of those tracks add nothing to the song. Right. It's because you have the ability to say, well, let's get the guitar track, 5 different amplifiers, 4 sets of microphones, and then we need 3 DI tracks because we want to reamp anything. I was like, can we pick a sound that just sounds right when you record it? How many guitar sounds do you need? This is a classic rock song. We need 2 sounds.
And that's that indecision that you get when you don't have a limitation, you know.
Right. Because you can record all that stuff, which is cool. Yeah. But then when you go to put it all together, it's like trying to make all of those elements mixed together and sound right is very difficult. Yeah. It's very difficult. So I spend a lot of time in my setup just figuring out what can we eliminate, or can we eliminate half this stuff? You know,
I've been doing a lot of that on the recording side lately. And I think I'm going to shoot a video on this in the next couple days, just to, you know, one of those, my thoughts kind of thing. Cause I realized that, and maybe it's because we've been doing more to the 8-track, but a lot of the videos even I've been putting out are a lot of minimal mic'd drums and things like that. And I'm not trying to be like a minimal mic only channel or drummer, but I got thinking about that because someone asked me about it. A friend of mine was giving me some shit for the Chiefs game because he said, were you in there trying to record the crowd with 1 mic and you're going to do a video on how to record a Chiefs crowd with 1 mic? I thought that was hilarious, but like if I would have thought of that, I would have done it. But it got me thinking that why I'm doing so much of that lately, and I think a large part of that is for the creative side. It forces you to come up with something with only a few things that ends up usually being somewhat unique to that moment. I saw someone in the comments mentioned a photograph somewhere in there, and that's kind of what I find the minimal thing, because you get it if you dial it in, whether it's a simple guitar thing, like you mentioned, there's only one track of guitar, not 18, and there isn't 27 tracks of drums. That mindset of creativity that those limitations force you into, I'm finding just to be quite fun, for one. And also, I'm coming up with some sounds that I think I would not have come up with had I done one of the gigantic sessions. And every time I put 20 mics on a kit now, I go, what am I doing? I just did last week, I did 4 mics. It sounded fantastic. Now I got 87,000 mics out here, and I got, there's phase here, and you got all these things to worry about.
Oh yeah, drums especially, just the phase alone. The more microphones, the more phase problems you have. I mean, it's really that simple.
But I've even been doing my guitars. If I have 2 mics on a guitar, I sum them to a bus on the computer, on the console, and I send in 1 track. It's over.
Right. And I think also too, then you have that particular session is unique. It's got its own unique personality and sounds.
Mm-hmm.
If you want a different sound, just use a different microphone. You don't need to use more microphones. Just use a different microphone. They all sound different.
Yep. And that actually, I think, if you go off of that, that will help inform you on if you're looking to buy gear. Oh, I need a new mic for this, or I need a new mic for that. What do I get? There's so many choices. If you get used to using your mics as your first stage of mixing, it's your EQ, it's everything. Then you kind of go, oh man, well, I've been getting this sound lately, but the sound I haven't been able to get that I need is this sound. Okay, well, what is it? Is it a mic pre? Is it a mic? The mic will have way more difference than the mic pre will. So, okay, great. I need to upgrade that mic, or I need to add to my locker mic B that will give me what mic A is not giving me for my vocal, or for my guitar, or for my, kick drum, or whatever it is.
Right.
And so I think that's a great way of, also learning what you need or to get instead of just buying stuff. For a long time, and I don't know if you were the same way, but in the beginning of my analog days, I would just buy things. Oh, well, that's a compressor. I'll just get that. Or, oh, that's an EQ. I'll just get that. And you get it, and you're kind of, well, that wasn't what I needed.
Yeah.
But I didn't understand why.
Yeah, I did. I did it first, but unfortunately, I didn't have enough money to buy as much as I wanted, so I didn't get too far down. I learned it quickly because coming from all in the box, it was apparent to me very quick once I got the console and we started to work on it. I went, whoa, this is way different. And it just kind of hit me then that, wait a minute, we don't need all this gear. You know what I mean? I don't need it all. And I don't use all of it. I mean, we laugh all the time. I use about 1/3 of what's in that rack. And some of it's going to be sold soon because I don't need it. It's not that it's not great gear. I don't need it all.
Right.
I don't need 47 channels of compression on a 32 channel console. You just don't need it. It's fun to have it. It looks cool, but I don't need it. So I would rather.
It makes great Instagram photos.
Yeah, it does. But I'd rather sell 2 pieces of gear and buy something like the Trinoff that really makes a difference.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're talking about, does it matter if I have, how many, distressors do I really got to have? I got a pair. That's all I need. I don't need 6 of them, so sell 4 of them and buy something that really is going to make a difference. At least. So that dawned on me pretty quick, which was good. And now everything that I do, any piece of gear I buy, it has to really make a difference, like the 542s or whatever, where it's like, okay, that's something I don't have that really makes a sonic imprint that I really like, or like the tube equalizer I recently bought. That something that nothing else sounds like.
Here, I'm going to put something up because I like this comment. And I don't know exactly if this is referencing anything specific we were saying about the recording process, but I think that right there is another thing that I like about working on the minimal side and trying to get things right away. I've noticed this, and this on a session yesterday when we were doing a bunch of vocals for an artist that I'm working with right now, and we spent a ton of time with sound, and we were just doing a lot of overdub stuff, and it's things that won't need to be mixed later because we tried them out. I had mics laid out in here. We really got into it. We were experimenting. We did combinations. It was just me and the singer. And I think getting close to the artist that you're working with is great instead of always going mix. Oh, in the mix. Oh, in the mix, man. It's like, come on, please. You got to record it before you can mix it.
That's right. Yeah, listen.
So I love that comment, even though I don't know
exactly. Sessions. Because I don't do the recording side, so I get the sessions, hoping that the producer is taking the mindset that we're talking about. Let's get it right. A lot like your Little Wing track. All you have to do is push those faders up and pan them a little. And I went, there you go. There's the record. I mean, it's there.
Well, when you have players like that, my hope is just not to screw it up.
Well, no, the recording was really good. The players were obviously fantastic. And there's no, I mean, that mix, I mean, it was 9 tracks. It took 35 minutes. I mean, it was done.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of that tutorial was, yes, it's a minimal amount of tracks, but I think my point in that video was stay out of the way of the mute. Get out of the way.
Right.
Just, I have all this gear. Don't put a bunch of stuff on something that already sounds great when he gave it to me.
Just because you have things to use doesn't mean you have to use them.
No, I don't think I used anything except the console, a bus compressor, and I think the 542s. And there was a little bit of compression on the 2 lead vocalists. I don't think we did anything to the drums, anything to the guitar, nothing to the bass. I don't think I did anything except let it, because the SSL is already compressing it as it comes in. You use all Roswell. I believe it was a Roswell.
They were all Roswell, but I can't remember the vocal mic. Was that the Delphos 1? Did I label that stuff?
No, you didn't label it with the microphone name, I don't believe. But it had a female vocal and a male vocal that were different. But it was great. It was like, this is, well recorded, great players, minimal amounts of stuff. Doesn't take long. You know what I mean?
That's the jazz stuff. I can't wait till Matt puts some of the jazz stuff out with Charles Ruggiero's band. The last stuff with Larry Goldings on keys. Oh my God. Same thing. It was, I think we had 2 mics on the piano, 3 mics on the drums, 1 mic on the upright bass, and 1 mic on the sax, and that was it. And it sounded all live in the room. And it sounded fantastic.
The player, I mean, right? Like saying, it all starts with the player. you know, great gear in the wrong player's hands is not a great recording.
No.
You know,
Delilah has woken up and is now doing
it. Is everything. And so if you can start there when you're recording your own music at home, start at, yourself and your playing ability.
I think to learn to get to that is you can't be afraid to make mistakes. And this is where practicing comes in because if it's like learning an instrument, learning a compressor, EQ, whatever it may be, you've got to learn how that stuff works. And you've got to, if you do that on your own time and practice, you can mangle things. And no one's going to die if you overcompress something. So overcompress it to find out where the limits are, or to even discover a new sound that maybe that overcompressing is great on a parallel. You don't know until you do those things. I wrecked so many, like the early 2000s, one after another mix I was trying. I was mostly stuff that we were doing on our own. I hadn't started doing it for anyone else really yet. And you're just trying to figure out how it all works and learn everything.
That's the only way to know.
Destroy.
Just ruin things. Don't practice on the guy that's paying you to do their music. Practice on your own stuff. But you don't know unless you try. So like a lot of times people say to me, especially in my courses, will say, oh, can we do a course where you give me a bunch of crappy tracks and how you fix them? I said, absolutely not. That goes against everything that I believe in this craft. To teach you how to fix a crappy mix or a crappy recording, there is no such thing. There are little tricks that we could do to fix little minor things, but I can't take something that wasn't recorded well, that's not well written and not played by good world-class players, and make it sound like it belongs on the radio. It doesn't work that way. So no, I'm not going to do a tutorial on how to fix crappy tracks. I don't work with crappy tracks. I just refuse to do it.
Same thing. I mean, I've even refunded deposits once I've gotten tracks sent to me going, I can't make this sound the way you think it's supposed to sound given on what you gave me. And I'm not going to put my name on that.
No, step one in any relationship I have with anybody is we don't talk money. We don't talk anything. I'm like to inquire, Dave, about having you mix one of my songs. What are the first steps? Send me an MP3, throw up your faders in your DAW. Don't put any plugins on it. Don't worry about how it sounds. Just send it to me. That 30% of the time, we don't even get past that. That's where we say, sorry, I can't work for what you just said. So I'm listening for playing. I'm listening for the song. I'm listening for the arrangement, the recording. Can I really make this thing sound what they're expecting it to sound like? If the answer to that question is no, then I just politely decline. I don't, that's not to offend anyone. It's just the way it is. I'm not going to get involved with something that I know that's not going to sound. You just can't.
It'll be bad for everybody in the end if you do, because everybody will be unhappy.
Yeah. So we have to have those bases covered before we even talk about a deposit. If I've taken somebody's deposit, it's because I know we're working with good stuff or good enough
Yeah.
stuff. You know?
This was before I started hearing stuff first, back when I'd get the deposit. Oh, send me something to hear, all that. And I'm like, wait, I can't do this.
No.
Now I do it. And it was actually after a conversation with you that I started flipping some of that stuff that was nice. But so far, I have never had anyone get mad at me if I've turned something down. And I'm usually pretty honest with why, because I want to try to help.
Yeah.
And they don't have to agree with anything I say, which is totally fine. But so far, most of the time when I've done it, I've gotten thank yous. And even a couple times, even if they didn't come back and mix, have me mix it or whatever, I'd get a message going, you know what, that actually helped us. We went back and we re-recorded things and it came out so much better because of, you being honest with us.
Yeah. And
so
that's
there's something
usually
to that too.
Yeah. It's usually, I'll do it as well. I mean, I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings because it is your art. And so that's, I'm just trying, I'm trying to help you. I'm not going to take your money if I don't think I can do the job. And I can only do, because a lot of people, and you get this too, I'm sure, I could just run it through your, look at all that stuff. It's going to sound great. It is going to sound great if it's great already.
Right.
I'm going to take something that sounds really good and I'm going to make it sound world class. I can't take something that doesn't sound good and make it sound world class. Can't do it. So, yeah, I think, but most of the time, like you said, most artists, if you do it in the right way, they're very appreciative of that. And I've had, we'd be in the middle of mixing an album and we get to a song and I say to the client, do you have access to redo a couple of these parts? We need to redo the bass. We need to redo the acoustic guitar. And they'll go back and fix the parts and resend me the session. It's like, okay, now let's mix the record,
Right.
And so
having that it's all about communication. I mean, all of this is about communication.
It's all those soft skills that, sometimes are difficult conversations and they just take practice like anything else on how you get good at them and how you do it in a way where everybody is appreciative and happy.
Miles says, the term that they used to use, and I always use too, is can't polish a turd.
Yeah, I don't want to use that
That's an oldie
word,
but a goodie.
Yeah, I wouldn't use that word with the client themselves because again, you are talking about too, especially
well,
art.
It depends on who the client is, but
yeah, you are talking about somebody's art and they're emotionally very attached to it, so you have to be sensitive to that and the way you do it. But there are sometimes difficult conversations you have to have. It's not often, but it does happen. And again, I've never had an issue where I never had anyone get mad at me, as far as I know.
All right. Hey, we're going to segue into a good question for both of us. Oh, okay. Hold on. Sorry, studio dude.
Get it on the screen.
Now it is.
Practice. There you go.
I hit the wrong one. Actually, someone commented and it moved on me. Okay. Question. Favorite gear, not the console, and the biggest sold gear regrets. So what's your favorite piece of gear in there, not your console?
My favorite piece of gear.
For any reason. Let's just for any reason it's your favorite piece of gear, even if it's just for small pieces of something. What's floating your boat right now?
I just bought a Master Bus EQ by Audio Gain Labs called the Empress. It's a Pultec style with a midband and it has an additional tube drive circuit in it. That thing's magical. And it's not very expensive. It's not very expensive as far as gear goes. And that's
not very
just under $2,000.
Oh, okay.
That's not bad actually.
That's not bad.
For two channels, something good like that.
Pultec with
the midband.
With the midband and an additional tube drive circuit that you kind of like on the Fusion, where you could turn the drive on and off. You can flip the tube in and out so it's got some extra, color and flavor in there if you want. That's my favorite piece of gear right now.
What about biggest regret of selling a piece of gear?
Probably when I originally sold my 542s a few years back. I knew the day I sold them it was a mistake.
There you go.
Now I have them back and I'm not selling them. Those are staying.
Yeah. I think for me, it right now, it's the Trident high-low filters. I'm using them on everything I possibly can, and they don't do what anything else does. I don't even know how to explain it. I even told them when they sent them to me, I'm like, I'm having more fun with this piece of gear than any other piece of gear I have.
Yeah.
because it's not an emulation of something. It's not another variation of something.
Right.
It's
Right.
completely on its own. I'm doing drums with it. I've got it going on guitars. I mean, all the mixing with the guitars we're doing, it's there. Bass, wherever I can use that to synth. Holy crap. So that's probably, at this point in time right now, my favorite piece of gear. And I think my biggest regret is probably the Chandler Germaniums when I sold those.
Oh yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about those.
I think at the time I was making a move on some other stuff, and I needed to buy multiple pieces of gear, and I didn't have the funds to do it, so I decided to sacrifice one to get multiple, and that was dumb.
Yeah.
Because the multiple none of them did what that did. And I got such a killer deal on them when I bought them that I could never buy them for that again.
Yeah, because they're pretty pricey.
That's probably my biggest
I've looked at those on the used market. They're not cheap. I mean, I've looked at some in the past, and I just haven't. So I'd love to try one of those one day. Just curious to see what it would sound like.
They're cool, and they are unlike anything else. A lot of that Chandler stuff is. I think the TG2 is probably one of my favorite mic pre's. I used to rent a TG2 so much from Audio Rents here. They called me the TG guy.
Oh, really?
I go, you got the TG2 in? Oh, is this TG guy? I'm like, yep. Yeah, we got it. When do you need it?
Nice.
Like, why don't you just go buy one? I said, because it's so much cheaper to just rent it from you when I need it.
Yeah, when you need it, right? Yeah.
But fantastic. So I think that's it on mine. Okay, so how do I gotta.
You can. There's an extra.
That's a good question, though. I like that one. I'm still getting used to this, but I'm liking this Ecamm thing.
You can also, in the preferences, set those comments on a timer. So every so many seconds, you decide what time interval, it'll just take it off the screen. I don't know how to do it, but I just know you can do it.
I won't waste time trying to do it right now in the live stream because I had to search. The comments keep going up. I'm like, oh crap, where did that one go?
Yeah. There's a way to automate that. Yeah.
All right, so we got any questions that we're missing right now?
Somebody had a question about thoughts about the Trident 68.
Okay, then I see that Miles talking about the SRV 330. I've been looking at that actually. So okay, where was the question about the 68? What was the question?
Well, thoughts on Trident 68.
Well, the 68 is a pretty cool, actually, little board. The front end mic pre is the same thing I have in here, so that part of it is identical to what I have. It's a great sounding pre. The EQ is a little different. It is based on the ADB, but it is a little bit different, but it sounds good. You have a little bit less functionality with the auxes and everything, but if you're looking to get a console, something that you could have in a killer price point, to get either use as a summing mixer, to do some tracking, to have really usable EQ, and have a really nice mic pre on your front end, I highly recommend that board. And it's a small footprint too. It's not, if you don't have a big room with enough to fit, larger console. I mean, the Trident, my 32 isn't necessary. I would call this a medium format board, and I think your SSL is just a little bit wider than this. So it's not the old days where it went from wall to wall to get 24 channels.
It's not an aircraft carrier, that's for sure.
But if you're in a smaller space, the Trident 68 will fit right in, and it will sound
How much
great.
is that? How much is that Trident 68?
You're gonna make me look it up.
Less than 20 grand. Less than 20
Oh
grand?
yeah, I think you can get into it for well less than 20 grand. Oh. Oh, I just moved something.
I can look it up.
Okay, you look it up, and I'm gonna fix my mistake I just made because right now I got Ernesto kind of behind Dave. Hold on. I see what I did.
Yep.
Okay, the world is right again.
There you go. You got it now.
It's because of the screen sharing right now. I have it in scaling mode. So if I want to see a different part of the screen so I can actually see what's going on, I have to move the cursor and then it goes there. But if I I have my cursor set to be, or my trackpad is also my button. I keep hitting the wrong thing. So this is user error.
Yeah, so they say about $15K for 16 channels. And then 17 for 24. And then Alex says the 68 costs less than the divorce that it comes with it.
Well, there you go. Does that 16 mic pre's, or is that just one mic pre? It's got 16 ins?
Yes.
Wow.
Yep. It's
That is pretty
16
good.
ins. It's, you know, the EQ on every channel. I want to say it's the full 8 buses. Auxes, I think it's 1 stereo and 4 mono. I could be wrong on that. Yeah, I just saw that. I'm going to get to that second. I was trying to remember what was on the 68. It has a little less in the master section. I don't think it has, the monitor section doesn't have the tilt EQ on it. But the front end of it is a full Trident front end. That mic pre on the front of it, it's the real Trident. It's not a Toft. That it is not. I mean, it is kind of what they used for the Toft replacement a little bit, although not as cheap. But it also is way better designed. And I had a Toft for a while. I got nothing bad to say about a Toft, man. Did a lot of great music on it. It was cool. It is a very different thing when you step into what they have branded even as the 68 Trident, as far as how it's wired, how clean the board is, the headroom, you know, the mic pre on the front end of it. So, and it's all D-sub. I personally, I'm not a huge D-sub fan. When I had this board upgraded last year, Justin asked me if I wanted to go D-sub. I was like, no. Just stick with my old. I like the other connections. One, I already had a lot of them. Two, it's just, yeah, I don't know.
Well, that's the big thing.
It's
You
probably a
already have all
dumb
the
thing, but
cables.
it's me.
No, if you already have all the cables, that's the smartest thing to do. Don't change the connection type.
Yeah. Which is one reason I'm leaning at the Motus when we actually do the upgrade, because I won't have to. I can almost just unplug, put in, plug in for the most part, you know. But yeah. So Miles, I want to talk about that. You guys see, this is okay. One thing, I'm working on a Discord channel for all of this too, because I know a lot of people are not on Facebook, and you know, I'm not on it that much actually anymore either. So I'm working on Discord so we can actually all talk to each other beyond this in a much better way. But Miles, are you in LA? Because I would actually love to check that out. I can't see the comments. I got to do scaling again. Hopefully I don't touch something.
He says, I'll be in LA in the next couple of months to get an amp fixed, and I can bring it to you.
Let me know. Let me know. We'll hang and we'll check some gear out. That'd be cool. Studio Fluff, who's going to NAMM? I'll be at NAMM for day. David, you coming out for NAMM?
No, out in LA? No, not this year. I'm going to go to probably AES in October, because that's more near in my neck of the woods.
Plus, AES is actually a bit more fun. The AES they do at NAMM is not so much. But I think NAMM's going to be really light this year because it's in April. But I'll be there. I know a few other people will, but there's a lot of companies not going. So I know they're trying to get it moved back to January. So I think the plan for them is next year to be back in January again. So we'll see what happens. But
well, Sona Recording Studio says my API has TRS, XLR, and D-sub. Holy macaroni!
Nice.
The headache I'm already getting from wiring that is bad. I need some Advil.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord.
Wow. Talk about connection flexibility, man.
Yeah,
Amazing.
that's great.
Marco, so you want a series of recording with really crappy hardware. You know, back in the full-on drums days, we did one where we had a Behringer board, we had some API gear, and then something else. And that was actually an interesting video to make. So what about, maybe not go crappy, what if it was just inexpensive? Because there's some inexpensive gear that I am quite a fan of.
Yeah, there's a difference between, there's affordable gear is if you have the right pieces, or could be really great.
Yeah.
Really great. Depends on what you're buying.
Yeah, exactly.
And then some of it is, you know, then some of it's the opposites. You know, the quality of the gear, the better are usually, you know, a little bit higher ticket items.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, that's a good point. I'm a fan of a lot of the Golden Age stuff, and that is really inexpensive, and it sounds great to me, and it gives me a sound I want, because all this stuff to me is just paintbrushes. You know, I had someone giving me a little bit of flack on not giving me flack. They just pointed out, you know, the R8 is a prosumer model, and I'm like, you know, who really cares?
Yeah.
You know, yes, is it technically that they sell that way? Yeah, but it's just a paintbrush. You know, if a $200 compressor, I have a 3630 down here that I bought for $40 that I use.
Right.
It's not, no one would call that a great compressor, but you know what? Sometimes it does exactly what I want. Just a paintbrush. You know,
Yeah,
so
it
if you know
depends
where to
on what you
use
do.
them and how to use them, they can be cool. But I think a little bit to your point is the one thing that I expect out of gear that I spend more for is not only for it to sound good, but it to be built in a way that will last well beyond my lifetime.
Yeah,
So I got a
there's
quality
gonna be
piece of
six
gear.
that. That is true, and a lot of times that is the case. Like, you know, like those DBX 168 compressors. I love those things for $250 on eBay. Those are great compressors. Those are inexpensive, sound really great. You know, the build quality is pretty good. But when you spend, you know, $2,000, $3,000 on a piece of gear, if it's done right, it's built like you said. Like you could throw it out of a window and it's going to survive. And you can, you know, like that Empress EQ I have, it's all military grade switches. Everything is stepped. You could be as aggressive with that stuff. You're not breaking that piece of gear, you know?
Exactly. And also, I think the quality control side of things, with some of the, you know, early on with some of the Golden Age stuff, there were some quality control issues. I had tons of them with what warm stuff we had here. I only have one piece of that left now that's been modded by Revive. But I think that's where with some of the inexpensive stuff you run into because of the way it's being made. There's just inevitably the possibility of quality control issues. You may have to send a piece or two back here and there. And if I'm going to buy a Neve piece of gear, whether AMS or Rupert or a Trident, I don't expect to have to send that back ever. I kind of expect that. I get that. That sucker's going to work, you know.
Right.
Yeah, quality control.
Yeah, some of the more mass-produced stuff, the more affordable stuff that might be made in different parts of the world, that you could have some QC issues along the way. Doesn't mean the gear's not good. It just means that, you know, again, it all depends on the piece. Like I said, you buy a piece of Neve gear or API gear, you're not buying, there is no cheap stuff, crap stuff. There is none. There's no such thing in their product lines. It's all high quality, great sounding, going to last you a lifetime. You know, they've stood the test of time pieces of equipment, but you're paying for that, you know?
Right.
So it depends. I know other people that use that Golden Project stuff and love that stuff. I've never tried one, but I've never heard anyone say that they didn't like it.
Somebody called me Charlie Grohl.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that as a ridiculous compliment and a good ridiculous. And I have a quick antidote, if I may, about that. About 5 years ago, I was in Atlantic City helping a good friend of mine, Ivan Kane, reopen his 40 Deuce Club in one of the casinos that had shut down and was reopening. And myself, Kevin Chown, who did the shows with him here in L.A., we flew out, my buddy Dave Lopez. So the three of us got on a plane and spent 3 weeks out in Atlantic City helping put this club back together to reopen when this casino was bought and was reopening, right? And I got off the plane in Philly, and I had all these people staring at me, and it was weird. You know, I'm like, my zipper, you know, I got no problems here. You know, I look, you know, I don't get it. And a guy came up to me, and he's like, oh, my God, could I get your autograph? I'm like, why? You know, I mean, you think I'm somebody. They thought I was Dave Grohl.
That's awesome.
And my hair was down and a little, you know, what little beard I can do here, you know. And I'm thinking, okay, you know, it's not, okay, long hair, beard, but we don't look alike in my opinion. So we're about 2 weeks into putting this club together and we're ready for opening night. And I'm taking a walk before the first night of the show because even though we're not the performers this time around, we were helping all the rest. I was just walking out in the casino just going, okay, I hope we got everything for the first night. And I walk over to get coffee at a Starbucks there. And as I'm walking up, there's like one guy and about 5 women and one lady that was older. And all these women are like talking. I'm walking up and they're still doing this. I'm like, what? Have I offended? You know, what's going on? And the lady who was older than me anyway comes over and she goes, they think you're somebody famous. And I'm like, oh, really? Who is that? That drummer from the Foo Fighters. I'm like, that's the second time on this trip I've got this. I said, ladies, I am really sorry to disappoint you. I am absolutely not that cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've never had that problem ever happen to me once ever. At least that's an awesome story.
Oh man, for a second I felt kind of good, and then I realized, oh no, I'm not that cool.
That's funny.
Okay, I saw a question about the 68 Marcos. I think something that I just want to answer real quick. I think he was asking, we talked about 68, 78, and he wanted to know 78 to 88 and why I went with the 88. Well, first off, I've been really lucky with this board. I got to do the beta testing. So and up until the end of the bus section, this is still the prototype. You know, we took all the guts out, dropped it in a 32 frame, and added the other channels. So the inside of this board is, not like what you buy now. Well, they fixed a lot of that stuff. But so this is the prototype. But I went with the Trident because, one, I had the Toft in already, so there was a relationship there. But I did a lot of recording on Tridents, over at Sound Image, spent a lot of time there. And I always loved how they sound. So when they called me and asked me if I was interested in doing that, I was like, you don't need to ask. Yes. Here's the key to the studio. If I'm not there, just go ahead.
Right. Right.
I don't even need to be there. So I jumped at the chance. So at the time this went in, there was only the 88. The thing that I like about that, besides the fact it's been rock solid, and for a prototype, we have had no issues other than normal wear. Like some pots have had to be changed out because they've been used a million times. Some buttons after you hit them. Things like that just go normal wear. It's like brakes on the car, right? There has been not one major issue at all. The only major issues that have happened have all been because of this guy right here. Wired something incorrectly, tried to blame it on the gear. It's what Ernesto and I calls the who buys this shit moment. You're sitting there messing with it and it's not working, like, who buys this shit? Oh, wait, hold on. It was me. I messed up.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any of the other boards at the time that came out. But the thing that I like about the 88, it's fully modular. I mean, I think I did this for the first time, Dave. I joined you and Dave on your channel. I actually took, with the board on, took a strip out.
Took a strip out, yeah.
Yeah. So it's, one, I have more auxes on this. You have all the EQs, not just the normal EQs, but every single monitor has the tilt EQ on it. It has a little bit more ins and outs than the 78 does. And every channel, if there's a problem, you can just pull one channel out, get it fixed, and drop it back in.
Right.
Which I've never had to do, by the way. Except for when I broke a capacitor one time pulling the channel out.
Oh, really?
One of those sitting out the side. And I didn't even realize when I did it. I put it back in. I'm like, man, only getting the left channel of the master. Pulled it back out and went, oh. Probably should have done that with a bit more care. Had to go down to Trident that day, and once we realized what it was, they gave me so much shit. It was deserved. Completely deserved. But I like the modular nature of it, that I can do that. Plus, I can have we're still doing some beta testing, but it's getting close with the automation. That's only going to be on the 88 as far as I know. Don't hold me to that, but I think so. So there's those things, But when it came out, there was no 1768.
Here's a cool question: what feature are you missing on the Trident? Because you obviously like it.
That is a good question. I know, Dave, you did one of these about what you liked and disliked about the SSL. Yeah. I think and some of these actually, for me, it's a little different because the production models, they've added some of these things that I don't have. Having the insert button on the buses, being able to disengage that. I don't have that. They have that on the production models now. I asked if we could mod it, and apparently it's not an easy thing to do. So for me, that's one. I would, on my buses, I wish that it was 8 stereos that I could function as mono, which is actually similar, I think, to the SSL, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it could be either or.
Right. So I have 8 monos that could be 4 stereos.
Right.
So I would, that. And I think I know they've been talking about doing some things to some of their new things in the coming years. So maybe some of that stuff will get fixed. I don't know. But that's for me, what I'm missing there, that's there might be one more that I'm just not remembering that if I think of it, I'll bring it up. But as far as functionality and tonality, this thing it's split and inline. I have more tracks than I'll ever need it mixed down if I want. Oh, I know the other thing. And Dave, I'm curious if it's this way on you, if you have this ability on the SSL. I wish that in my monitor section that I had the ability to send that somewhere other than just the master output. And I think they did that. One was keeping, the board a little bit shorter so that monitor section isn't, it's not a full fader. It's a knob for me.
Right.
It has the tilt EQ and a couple other things there, which is cool, like routing to the auxes, which is really nice. But I wish there was the selection that I could send the monitor somewhere else besides just feeding the stereo output.
Yeah.
And that's about it. I mean, so far, none of those things have stopped me from working.
Yeah, right. Again, a lot of those, I think the SSL is almost identical to everything you said. All the things you said that you don't have, we don't have it here either. And they'd be nice things to have. But, again, you can get consoles like that. I tell people, but how much money do you want to spend? I mean, I hear it all the time. I'd love to have automation in my board. That'd be fantastic. They don't make an Origin with automation.
Right.
The console that has automation is, 2.5 times the price of what I paid for my console. So it's like, well, I'd love to have it, but I'll do automation the way I do it, and it's a workaround, but it works.
Yeah, you just find, sometimes it leads, not having something leads you to a new workflow that ends up being cool, so you just kind of got to figure it out. Yeah, and I know once the automation, I don't think it's going on the Trident. I don't think it's going to be something that is going to be ridiculously expensive. It's obviously not going to be, $500 to put it on there, but I think it's going to be something that is going to be quite affordable, especially if you're already spending, $60,000 on a console.
Yeah.
Which will be kind of cool.
If it's a $20,000 option, you go, okay, that's that, I would.
Yeah, you're getting close to half the price of the board at that point.
Right. I would have spent if they don't have one. It's not like the Origin. It wasn't an option. It wasn't like, well, you can get automation for $20,000 more. It's not an option. If it would have been, I probably still would have did it, because again, the next step up in the SSL line is the AWS, and you go from 50,000 to 110,000.
Yeah, that's a big number.
Now that has automation in it, which is awesome. But if I would have went from 50,000 to 75,000 to get automation, I would have spent 75 to get Flying Faders automation. They just didn't have it.
Right.
So, which is okay. Again, like you said, it's just work. It's just,
I don't know how much room you have in there, but you might check out the, oh crap, what's the name? Fader. I have an email with it somewhere that it's only fader automation, but it's a company that makes basically a rack unit that you can hook things up in banks of 8 and install it into, for the most part, any console, as long as there's room for the PCB to fit under, and all you're doing is taking your fader out and replacing the fader.
It's a automated fader.
Yeah, it's automation. It's a 1 rack unit. I think you can do up to 32 channels in 1 rack.
Get out of here.
I'm spacing the name right now. I'll think of it and send it to you. You have to have enough room under your faders for some, the connectivity and stuff to fit. So that it'll depend on that. But fader something.
But
I'll
how
find
does
it and send it to you?
But it's not. It's just okay. But does
it's
it have
only fader automation.
Okay, so it doesn't have. It's not a. There's no computering that's gonna remember the moves, right?
Well, no, you'd have to. It hooks up via Huey, I believe.
Oh, I got you.
So you'd be hooking it to your DAW, and you'd have a, like the way I do it here is I set up a set of auxes in the front of my mix in Logic.
Yeah.
I set up 32 auxes, and it mirrors what's on the console. And then none of those faders actually send anything out. I send out via pre-fader sends on the auxes, and that comes out to the board. So those faders in Logic now, all they do is automation on the board. So all my moves are post anything outboard.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yep, it makes sense.
And then all my moves are stored in the Logic session.
Oh, okay. Got it.
All right, here's a couple cool questions. The 542s, what do you use it mainly on? Instruments or just two-bus?
I think both of us is two-bus.
Two-bus.
Although when I didn't have it in my two-bus chain, I would use it on instruments. Really cool on a vocal.
Yeah, I could see where it would be awesome on instruments. Yeah, but I use them on the two-bus.
Even cool on drums if you're, if you put them on a kick and snare, you do a minimal thing and you kind of hit them and blow it. It can be really cool. But for me, it's hardwired. You can't see it; it's just off camera, but it is hardwired in my mix bus setup. Regal Beagle in the house. Rock on.
What's,
What are the questions? We
what's
missing
the,
something?
What's the electric bill like to run on those consoles?
Not bad. I mean, I don't know on yours, but I know these newer consoles are. It's nothing like having an old, Neve or SSL. There is no machine room. I have one. You can't see it. It's up over here behind me. I have a small rack in the back that has some Furmans, and my power supply for the console, which is 1 2-space rack. There's fans in the back of it that I have never heard, and they run all the. Well, Justin tells me they run all the time.
Yeah.
I've never heard them, so I actually can't verify that. I have never heard them once, and I shut off every day.
Yeah, I do as well. And it's it takes about as much energy as a desktop computer. That's what they told me, and it's true. And I power it down every day. Mine are all internal power supplies to the board. They're not even an external power rack. And doesn't take a lot of energy at all, really. That's the one advantage. That was the very first thing I asked about when I started shopping for a console. Do I need a machine room and racks? And you don't need any of that stuff. You don't need special air conditioning in the machine room. You don't need any of that with a modern console. That's the beauty of them.
I just saw Mike said FaderMate. Yeah, so I think that is the company. Dave, take a look at them. FaderMate.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it'd be interesting to check those things out.
Studio Flush asking, do you set it and forget it, the master bus chain, or do you still?
I got to use this fancy thing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
or do you still fix and tricks it on every mix?
For me, I have some settings that are my starting point almost every mix, which I think is what is up right now. I'm almost always on. I start with the 15 IPS setting. And my blend of saturation is at 50%, but my saturation is only like at 10 o'clock. And I don't start with any silk on ever. And I flip that on later in. My C1 never changes, ever. And I can push into, because I don't use the insert on my master channel. I use that fader as a throw into the mix bus. I can push in more or pull back that way. So I never change the C1 ever. And the ultraviolet has a setting on the bottom at 50 hertz and I think some 20K on the top that's always on to start with. As I get through a mix, I will start going through the silk and I will play with, do I like how the silk brings out, my upper mids and my upper over the SSL? Do I like them both? And then as I get towards the end of the mix, almost every time I'll do a sweep with the high mid band on the ultraviolet between maybe 3K and 6K. Really wide band, only one dot. There's no numbers, so I go by dots. One dot, never more than a dot there. And I just kind of sweep through there with my eyes closed to see what happens. And sometimes I'm like, I turn it back off and go, no. I like where everything sounds. Occasionally, I've left that on because it brought something forward, and I dug it. Yep. Very rare that I'll use the low mid-band. Usually that's to fix something, but I don't use it that often. So C1 is set it and forget it. Rupert and Eve, the 542 has a starting point, and then I do a little on and off with the silk. And usually I only start about 25%, but sometimes, what's it going to do? Let's turn it all the way up.
Yeah.
Most of the time it goes back down. So that's how I do it. So it's a little bit of both set it and forget it as well as checking out things. What about you, Dave?
Pretty much the same. It's a starting point on everything, and then I mix into everything. I always start with the red circuit, always on, and I usually will leave it there. I'll check it, but I mix into it. And then there may be some, I just know where the sweet spot is on all that master bus gear. So I just making sure I'm hitting the sweet spot. And then occasionally I may have to go up or down a little bit, but I don't change it very much. And the master bus EQ is usually 20K, 2 dB, 30 hertz, 2 dB. And then I turn on the tube drive circuit and I mix into it. And then sometimes there may be more shaping at the ends, but not a lot usually. It's just a fine tuning thing. I try to mix into all of that as I go. So it's not completely set it and forget it, but it's not a whole bunch of tweaking.
So
much.
it sounds like we're kind of similar. I gotta Kaiser Soze, man. Come on, you're killing me here. This is awesome. This has got to go up. Okay, that made me laugh, man. I'm glad you're on the broadcast today. It says his SSL6 gets hot and never had an issue with the electric bill. Oh, you rock, dude. That's awesome. We missing anything else here, question wise?
Yeah.
Delilah snoring is always on. Yeah, there is that. That isn't going away anytime soon. I don't
Yeah.
even notice it anymore. Man, what time is it?
Yeah.
Holy crap!
Yeah.
It's almost 5.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just getting started. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Miles says, cool. I have a Neve 8232 and it needs a machine room and a 30 amp dedicated power circuit. Not to mention the
Yeah.
heat that comes from it.
Yeah. Holy crap.
Yeah, those little consoles. Yeah, you have to have those. Yeah, on some consoles.
I mean, I get some heat off of mine if it's on for a while. The top
Yeah.
of it's,
Yeah.
Yeah, mine
it's
too. It
not
gets a little
hot.
warm.
It's just, warmth.
Yeah, with all the gear on in the room, if I'm in here working 6-8 hours, it could get a little warm in here, especially in the summer.
Yeah.
But it's not like, oh my God, it's terrible or anything like that. It's just a part of working with gear. You turn it on, it
Yeah.
gets hot.
Yeah.
You know?
And I have dedicated 30 amp breakers in here too, because I also have everything on backup batteries. Well, almost every. No, I think we have the entire room, including the video rig. I think the only thing that isn't, which is probably good that we're not having a problem right now, is the internet router. So if there was a power spike, we can sit here and talk to ourselves and see ourselves, but you all would lose us.
Yeah.
So I need to fix that. But yeah.
All right.
So man,
yeah. That was great.
this has been fantastic.
This was awesome.
Dave, I always love talking with you, man.
Yeah, man, same here. I love talking to the
And you are right. Every time you say it's good that we don't live closer together, because we
it
would
would be a bad.
Yeah, it would be bad.
bad. We get a lot of cool videos, I think, would get out of it, but neither one of us would make any money.
Most of those
That'd be-
videos would be us selling gear to pay rent.
Yeah, right. That's exactly what it would be.
But
But yeah,
this is
this is always a lot of fun, man. It's always good talking gear and trying to help people out and answer questions. And I'm glad look, Ecams are running almost 2 hours, man, on both channels. It seems like it's working great.
And no one's told us the aliens have landed.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying actually, I'm still getting used to, obviously I need to keep my hands off the trackpad so I don't randomly turn stuff on and off.
Right.
But I think this workflow is going to be great. We'll get back to doing even some of the longer, and we're going to have a couple announcements on some of the live stream stuff that we're going to be doing soon. So this has been fantastic.
Yeah, some great questions. So, this is multitasking over here, answering. There's a whole different universe going in the comment section.
Well,
right?
I know. See, and that's what we're going to have to work on now. And Dave, I'll let you know how this works. Is we almost did this today, but we didn't. Too many new ththings. We didn't want to try it. We're going to have the second machine logged in to Ecamm, and we're going to see if we can have. So he's sitting right now just on YouTube, and I'm getting all the Ecamm so I can share it, and you can see them all, right?
You can log in from another machine and control the first machine. That's
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not
I don't know
sure
if
we'll
can
be
do
able
that.
to, but we're going to try it. Studio. I'll have some dates for you soon. We're working some stuff out right now. There's a lot of things coming up. So
Yeah, and then check out David's YouTube channel. So.
oh yeah, and go. He's got both the Trinovs. You got a ton of great videos, man.
Thank you, man.
And
Appreciate
you
that.
do a lot of live streaming as well. So you guys go
I do.
subscribe over there. They do
Yep.
great stuff over there. So we're gonna talk soon. This is well. Hopefully, we should try to do this like a once a month thing. I think.
Yeah, next time you'll come on our channel, and I'm going to try to multiple stream it too, just to see if it works, because I haven't done this yet. This is the first time, so
Oh, I totally forgot we were doing that too.
yeah.
And everything's still working?
On my end, it is. I mean, I'm watching both channels on YouTube, and everything's running. The chats are running,
Sweet.
so it looks to be
I
working.
call this a success. For once, I'm actually not stressed in the middle of one of these because something isn't working right. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
I feel pretty good right now.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, you guys go check out Dave's channels. He's a lot of great stuff on mixing music, analog, home recording made easy. Am I forgetting one? Or is that the? Do you have another one?
Yeah, mixingmadeeasy.net. That's a mixing membership website if you want to learn how to mix in the box. And then if you don't mind, I have a hybrid. We're talking hybrid and mixing analog. I have a hybrid mixing course that actually the pre-sale drops tomorrow. So if you go to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, you can get $100 off that mixing course for the next 3 days starting tomorrow. And that's 7-8 hours, 5 camera angles. We mix a whole song. You get all the multi-track files, blah blah blah. But what reason why I'm even mentioning that is because some of the things we talked about tonight. There's a lot in my courses that really talk about the thought process and the philosophy around gear choice, how we think of the gear, and why we make the decisions that we make when we're mixing in the analog domain, and how it differs from plugins, and then most importantly, how you can kind of emulate the same kind of workflow when you're using only plugins. I have a whole section based on that. So if people are interested in learning about that stuff, go to Home Recording Made Easy and save $100 starting tomorrow.
Nice. I highly recommend anything he does.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
All right, man. So we're going to...
Yes.
This has been great.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm digging the
fun.
new setup. I'm going to actually do a video pretty soon on this whole setup. I'm waiting on a couple things to show up to clean up some of my Ethernet cable mess that's going on over here. But I'm going to do a real deep dive on like how this whole thing comes together a little bit. So it's kind of interesting. At least I think it is.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Dave and I wanted to talk to you guys about next time you come on our channel. We never talked about the songs in the studio. I know the whole series, which is fantastic, but I'd love you to take us through the whole video production end of this. Now with all this new stuff you bought, it'd be really great to show people.
I'm
I really
actually
want
hoping
to do that
when we get back to some of those, and we're going to do more of the Cue the Tape series. We've learned a couple things in the setup that hopefully is going to streamline a few things, but yeah, we'll geek out on all that stuff.
Yeah, I'd love to learn about that because I'm sure I can incorporate some of those ideas over here too on how you guys are doing all of that, because it's insane what you guys are doing with that stuff. It's crazy.
All right. Well, dudes,
Well, that's it.
we're good.
Excellent.
I think
So-
Delilah's ready to go out.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
So okay, so you're in charge of stopping this.
I know now I got to figure out what I'm pushing because I didn't actually think of that until right now. So
There should be
You
a button
guys,
on there
thanks.
that says, yeah, you'll say end
Where is it?
broadcast. I think you'll see a button that says end broadcast, and then you may have to also end the stream on your YouTube channel itself
Oh
too.
yeah, I can do that on my end.
okay, you see that?
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you. Enjoy
Thank
the
you,
rest of the
guys.
weekend. We'll see you
Thanks,
soon.
guys. Bye.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.
We may be here a minute while I figure out what to push.